Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 280. I am very fortunate, lucky to have Jay Stamatelos on the podcast today. He is a professional coach, a IFS practitioner, and author, to say the least. Now, let me say, Jay, how are you today in glorious sunny Pittsburgh?
Oh, so nice, so warm. It's a balmy, maybe around 5 degrees Celsius. So we're doing great here.
Yeah.
Uh, Thank you, Miwa. It's just nice.
Yes, Jay lives in like part of the world in America where you like go. When you think about America, you go, yeah, East Coast, West Coast, and Texas. But everyone forgets about in the middle, where like the summers are hot and the winters are brutal. It's like, yes, uh,
Very true.
yeah. I have to ask now. You, sir, have led a rather interesting career, to say the least. What put you okay. Um, for example, like lead cybersecurity analyst, counter-terrorism intelligence analyst to now coach. What? How does that work out?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's probably a few different ways I can answer it, but and I'm happy to go into length at any of this. But really, it was so I got into counterterrorism work when I was inspired by 9/11. It happened when I was 15 years old. I was in school at the time, and it wasn't until we came home that I realized what actually happened. And I just sat in front of the TV for hours and I watched the buildings fall over and over again. I watched people jump to their death over and over again. And at some point, my mind just maybe it as a means to try to help me cope, it just became fixated on this question: what would make someone kill thousands of people they never met, and how could we have changed that decision in advance?
Mm.
So that inspired me to, I was always interested in natural sciences beforehand. I got really interested in the social sciences after. I ended up going to college and graduate school, getting degrees in security and intelligence and all these things. And I was working in counterterrorism, and it was very rewarding because on the one hand, I'm deploying with the SWAT team to things and going to barricaded suspects and hostage situations and respond to natural disasters and conducting intelligence assessments to protect my city.
Mm.
But it was also very, it was, it always felt like we were a step behind because you're always responding. So they always get to act first and then you come in later.
Mm.
And I was starting to get really just frustrated with it because it felt like it was, me, especially as a young idealistic kid, I wanted to make a change in the world. I didn't want to play a game. I wanted to bring change. But the whole system just seemed to be built to continue the same things over and over again, this cat and mouse game over and over and over again, and not really a focus on prevention, not a focus on mitigation, not a focus on, why are people making these decisions and how can we stop it? And then in my mid 20s, I went through my own extreme deep depression. I became suicidal. Because my whole life I motivated myself through self-loathing, feeling I was never enough. And, like, you suck right now, but if you would do this, then you'll be enough, then you'll be something. And so I always motivated myself by degrading myself. And for a plethora of reasons. I just hit a point in my mid 20s where I was working full time. I was going to grad school full time because that's what winners do. You can't scale back. And I had other issues happening and health things. It like all of the weight of the world in my life rested on my mental health, and eventually that snapped.
Mm.
And so luckily, I was when I finally admitted that I knew I had an issue, I went to a guy who I knew who was playing the role of a friend and a mentor in my life. Father Nace, he was this Irish Catholic priest who was at my university was Catholic, and so but he and I became friends, even though I wasn't really religious at the time. And I went to him because my career prevented me from going to normal therapy. If I got a mental health diagnosis, there were jobs I wouldn't have been able to go to. Like there was all of these costs that would have come to it. So I couldn't seek traditional help.
a bit
Yeah.
mental. Because like this is the thing, just from the sort of nature of that type of work. Okay, look, okay, admittedly, there is going to be stuff and information you can't tell the sort of general public, but surely there should have been like a security cleared therapist in order to for people to detox or unload some of that heavy burden. Because like don't get me wrong, it like I live in a world where there's I like to be informed, but there's certain things I'm like, ignorance is bliss. Because if you know what everything what goes on, sleep
Yeah.
would not be an ally to me, you know?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And it's very weird though, because most of the pain didn't even come from my job. I would watch a video on bioterrorism and it would relax me. Like I was weird, because it was so familiar. I know it's odd,
It's
but
like,
it's
okay.
but there were certain jobs I was looking at where they just said you cannot apply to this if you have any sort of anxiety diagnosis or depression. So even if I would have gone to someone who was cleared, I couldn't have that diagnosis. This is a federal government issue and it's very stupid.
Okay, because surely if someone has stuff in the background, like
Right.
building and building and building, going into a high pressure job like that, it's not going to lead to some of the best decision making in that sort of situation.
Right. Right. It's a archaic system based on outdated beliefs, but it's what I had to navigate with. And so I went to him and I went to Nace actually saying, look, I don't know where to go for help. I'm suicidal. I need something. And he said, well, I'll help you. And I'm like, man, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for you to help me. I'm looking for you to point me in direction. But he said,
Mm.
no, trust me. And to make a long story short, he invited me in. A couple of weeks later, I sat in his office and he just sat me down on a Saturday and he said, I want you to tell me all the reasons you hate yourself, just
Mm.
all of them. And so for an hour and a half, it was like a dam burst and I just poured it all out, just poured it all out, just like everything, things I forgot about, skeletons I hid in my closet. It felt like I was just vomiting over and over again this poison while coals, like hot irons and coals were being shoved into my chest. And it just was this gut wrenching experience. And he barely said anything. He just sat back and just kept asking me to keep going, keep going, keep going.
Mm.
Then about an hour and a half later, I'm drained and I'm looking down and I'm looking at like my 20 Kleenex in my hand and I'm thinking, what the fuck did you just do? Like, this is someone you care about. Why, why did you just tell them things you've never told another person? What are they going to think about this? And I just looked up and he looked at me and he said, are you done? I said, yeah. And this huge smile came on his face. He jumped out of his chair. He came over to me, gave me this huge hug, and he just said, I love you. And I just broke down all over again. And that moment saved my life, not in so much that he did, but he modeled for me what it meant to show true compassion, to show deep imperfection, but choose to show love to that anyway.
Mm.
And I never had that before, at least not at that level. And so that changed everything in how I view the world. And I spent the next few months kind of picking myself back up, getting back together. But as I looked around me and as I started to share my story, I saw versions of this in the life of everyone around me. Like they weren't as bad as I was, but talking to many of my peers who were in their 20s who were saying like, oh yeah, I totally hate myself, or I refuse to let myself do any of the things I want to do, or I think I'm shit or I'm this. And I'm thinking, this is a huge problem, like not just at the individual level, like not just that we suffer, but think of all the great works of art, the masterpieces, the books, the inventions, the businesses that are all being lost because they're dying with the people who hold them,
Mm.
because everyone's so wrapped up in this fear. And I just became fixated on this idea of this is a much bigger problem for my community than terrorism.
Mm.
Like this is has a much bigger impact than terrorism does. And so in human behavior, decision making was always what I was actually interested in. And so I just slowly found myself gravitating more towards this. And I ended up getting in a relationship with a coach who was a counselor beforehand. She said, I really think you should check it out. And I did. And I kind of took off with it. It was an immediate match for me. And I've been doing it for over 10 years now.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because like there's a lot to delve in with that. But like this is the thing. The first thing what sort of comes to mind with
Yeah.
regards to like your life before your epiphanal moment and your life now is the simple fact of going from reactionary to being proactive. Is that a true? Am I true in saying that? Am I
Yes.
correct?
Because I would, the way I would frame it is saying I was in a hyper self-protective role
Mhm.
beforehand, which is a very reactionary place. Then I want to move into the question of, well, what do I actually want to do with my life? Who am I? What life do I want to have if it's not going to be this constant self-degradation? And that is me making a proactive choice. So I absolutely think we could see it that way.
Yeah, it must have been a difficult skill to learn because like the whole thing is, like I don't know how
Yes.
many years it took you, like you were living a reactionary way, being in a reactionary job, and like if you've like to get high up, you had to be very much that is the way we have to do it.
Right.
ABC, this happened. ABC, ABC, ABC. To now, like going, okay, how can I get on that side and be a positive or do this in this way? How, what was the sort of first proactive skills you picked up?
Oh, yeah. So it felt like learning to walk again.
Mm.
I had to learn so so like I said, Nace gave me a model. He gave me a model for how to treat myself. That even though I am imperfect, even though I am flawed, even though I have issues, I am still a human being who's deserving of love and respect just like anyone else. And this is a concept that I use heavily in my work now, which is referred to as self-compassion.
Mm.
This idea of, if we could see ourselves as an ally we want to help instead of an enemy we want to defeat, how
Yes.
does that inform the way we behave? And so I had to totally rethink, how do I make decisions? How do I do this? And it was, okay, well, instead of me being fixated on who I think I should be, what if I pull back and just ask, what are my needs right now? If in the next 15 minutes, what's the best choice I can make to help myself in the future just by taking care of my needs right now? And so it became much more of this self-awareness, self-acceptance, just, okay, I'm going to work with myself as if I'm an ally. I want to help. How can I do that?
Mm. Yeah, like work at with yourself as an ally. Look, put it this way: we all know the sort of internal voice which speaks to us. There is the cheerleader, and then the other. Yes, forever like yeah, putting doubt in one's mind. Forever like going, hey. Stop being an arsehole. Stop being you can't do that.
Yeah.
And that sort of internal cheerleader wants to be there, but so often is drowned out because hey, no one like failure is one of those things people don't like. It's even though it's an integral part of life, and anyone who goes, yeah, oh, what is practice? It is control failure time and time again until the big moment or the big stage comes on where you do like put it all into practice and hopefully you have a victorious moment in that
Right.
moment. But we still shy away from it, even though it's
Yeah.
a very true, well, it's a fundamental like thing of life, you know?
Absolutely. So this was actually a big thing for me, and it continues to be a big thing for me now, which is to become friends with that self-critic,
Mm.
that really critical voice. And what I learned about mine is it was actually trying to help me. It saw me grow up in an environment where it felt like perfection was demanded. And the only way it could keep me safe was by pushing me so hard that I would accept nothing less than that. And that, even though its intention was good, The only way it knew how to do that was by being a whip. But as I came to learn about that part of myself and I gave it the same compassion, or learned how to give it the same compassion I was learning to give myself, it was like, hey man, I'm not really thrilled about doing this job either. I just want you to be okay. And I learned to befriend it. And that's been a very interesting journey. And that's so much of my work with the people I work with now is, okay, how can we work with this self-critic who says that you're shit and that you're worthless? And
Mm.
because it's probably trying to help you.
Yeah, perfection. Did you manage to find it?
Yeah, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, it's so IFS, internal family systems, which is the main modality I use, it carries this assumption that we're all made of different parts. So
Yes.
we would say, like, Miwa has a cheerleader, he has a critic, he has maybe parts that carry shame, he has parts that really excited. And so if you have an issue in your life, there's probably one of these parts that's really hyper activated or is dealing with a problem or is carrying some deep emotional pain. And so we actually are able to go through this process of finding these parts of ourselves. This critic found out that the critic is protecting, let's say, for an example, a little boy who was 8, who had something traumatic happen to him that taught him, you need to be perfect. And if we can help that 8-year-old boy, then this critic doesn't have to keep doing that job. Because
Mm.
it's like, oh, he's safe now. My person's safe. And a lot of times they do change. And it was interesting that you started this by talking about cheerleader, because in IFS, we see so often these self-critical parts of ourselves. When we're able to learn about why they're doing the job, when we learn about their history and what emotions they're responding to, a lot of times they actually try to become, they say, I want to be a cheerleader because I know how to motivate you. I
Mm.
know how to keep things going. And if I don't have to respond from fear, I can help. So I just find that interesting.
Mm. I see. No, like this is the thing. Like it's one of those things. Well, if like fear and anger, I would say one of the like people like say they're negative and everything like this. Like I've seen people do extraordinary things when it comes from that position. Like
Right.
sometimes not the most positive things, and sometimes and sometimes you're like, how on earth did you manage to do that? That like amazing things come from that place. But it is fear and anger are only meant to be, I imagine, like the way I see it, a sort of burst type
Yes.
situation.
Yes.
You like when you use it's like, yes, okay, oh, I'm scared, get away or do something. Oh, I'm angry, fight, do something. And it's meant to go and gone. But when it's just there stewing in that for, you know what I mean? Not even a day, not even a week, months, years, decades.
Yeah.
I think people too often get numb to it and they don't actually see how that is affecting them personally or in the greater world, you know?
I mean, that's spot on. So for things like IFS that are trauma informed, we make the assumption or the assertion that a lot of the coping mechanisms we use are things that worked for us, maybe even just once when we were younger, and just some part of ourselves said, "Oh, I'm just going to keep doing that. Then
Mm.
that worked. I'm just going to keep doing it." So, like you said, fear is an excellent motivator. I've seen people, the average person who I'm working with, who is someone who is struggling with what I call anxious insecurity or the feeling of being chronically not enough no matter how much they achieve.
Mm.
These people are often like they switch between being hyper motivated and driven and being deeply depressed and burned out. And when they're in that hyper motivated driven mode, they're using fear because it's such a great motivator. But
Mm.
just like you said, if you're using that every day for years, you burn out. Like it requires too much energy. And so if this was a short-term thing, great, but this will kill you in the long run because it's like you're making withdrawals from a banking account without putting anything in. There's no positive input. There's only negative withdrawals. And at some point, you're going to hit zero.
Yeah. Like, no, I agree. Yeah, you will hit zero one day. But like this is the thing. How would you like if we use the bank analogy as we're using, like how would you tell people to put like a good deposit in or like putting the deposit, one thing, or basically making a good long-term investment. They are the same, but they are vastly different.
Right. So I think if this doesn't answer, you can let me know and I'll try to answer it in a different way. I think so. Two things. One, something about what you just said makes me think of something I talk about with clients, which is there has to be some degree of an awareness that we are at some level who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So John can make good decisions, or make John can make certain decisions that lead to one life, and John can make other decisions that lead to another life. Both of those Johns will lead totally different outcomes, but John cannot stop being John. And so there are limits, and we have to learn how to work with ourselves. And I think if you want to talk about putting deposits in, it comes back to, do you know who you are and what you need? Do you have any sort of a healthy relationship with yourself where you're able to see yourself as that ally and you can say, I know these are my needs and I know I'm going to do the things I need to in order to take care of them and give myself those.
Mm-hmm.
And really that self-compassion we were talking about at the beginning is just, I think, the best general way to really put your foot into that pool and play with that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Because like this is the thing. I think a lot of people forget in the equation of life. There are many figures, facts, figures, and everything will change around you. But the one sort of constant, while all the variables change, is you on that regular basis. So if you do good things, generally, good things will come to you. Yeah, every now and then, I've said this before, but every now and then in that equation, bad things will happen because that is life. And vice versa. Like if you do bad things will generally happen to you. Then because life, the equation, yeah, you might randomly get a good thing what happens to you, but you are the constant. Like, yes, with that consistency, which is one of the most powerful things in this world I know of. You do consistent good things, you do consistent bad things. It compounds and you'll be amazed what can happen at the end of it. Now, just be like breaking the cycle and being like getting on that positive path isn't easy. And like what for yourself, like you said, your partner put you onto the realm of coaching.
Right.
Okay. So that is a completely sort of different path. Did you like when she said it to you, did you like go, that's it, coaching, that's for
No, no,
me?
no, 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 no. No, I was very hesitant to it. It really, and even through the whole thing, I was a natural fit, but I was always still very skeptical of it. And I grew up, I grew up around a lot of motivational tapes and a lot around the things like that. And I held a bit of a grudge with them. And so I didn't want to have, because there were some times where it was good. There were other times where it felt like it was just more pressure, more shaming. Like, you don't want to be a loser, you want to be a winner. And just like, oh, fuck, man, how much do I have to achieve to be a fucking winner? Like, it's just, for a young person to be listening to that, I think there were certain ways it struck me. But what I like about coaching was that it was among other things, is that it's not you don't have to use diagnoses. We don't pathologize anything. So we don't labels like anxiety, depression, all those things we don't really look at. We just say, you are a person who has an issue. How can we solve it? And a lot of now trauma informed work like IFS, which is deeply emotional, is primarily used by therapists, but I'm trained in it as well. Um, takes the same approach. We don't need to use labels. You have different parts, they have issues. We can go in and work with them. So it felt like I liked the equality of meeting people where I'm not like some guru or I'm not I'm the doctor, you're the patient. We're partners. And to help you to say, are you making the choices the way you want to? Where do you want to be going? Just being like a good mirror and kind of, if we make it into a boat, you're the captain, I'm the first mate, but you have the final decisions. I'm just here to provide a structure, a framework, and basic guidance.
Mm. Yeah, no, because this is the thing, from what I get the vibe from you and everything like this, you're helping people like, how can I say, reflect upon themselves to become a little bit more self-aware.
Yes.
Because like the whole thing is, I think a lot of the problems, I would say, and not even just young people, I would say people in general have today. They don't have, because there is so much sometimes going on, they don't have that sort of time to take a breath and like, yeah, like go, what is going on with me? Is this who I am, or is this what
Yeah.
I like to be? And like, I think with regards to what happened with you with the priest, like giving you that moment to like, oh yeah, you know what? Exhale rather than just
Yeah.
in exhale and being able to go, right, this. Until that point of self-reflection for yourself came into play, then it opened a new pathways for you to like go, yes, a coach. Yeah, I don't get me wrong. I understand totally why you would skeptical. You're asking to let go of everything you held
Right.
true and dear to you, to like go into this new realm, which sometimes isn't like, it isn't easy. It takes
Oh, no.
like to parody Apple. It takes courage, but but yeah, you get what I mean. But yeah, helping people get self-aware. Would you say there it has been a large struggle for people to find that sort of self-awareness these days? You found, or is
Well,
it?
I think that's what's bringing it. Like I'm one of those people who is sad that his job exists because it would be nice if it didn't.
Yeah,
I think the biggest problem facing the Western world. I know this is an issue in the States. I don't know how bad it is in the UK, but is this problem of disconnection? Just overall, humans are a hyper-social animal. We live in these very individualistic, individualized, cut off homes from each other. I do a lot of work with men. Men are the biggest. I used to run the only men's group in Pittsburgh years ago. Most men seem to work well with men. Uh, most of my clients for the past 10 years have been men, and there's this big push in America, well, not a big one, a small growing one, of trying to get men to be more open and engage with each other and form better friendships. And you'll hear guys say to each other, man, if you have a problem, you should be willing to go out to someone else and ask for help. And I'm like, man, we have a hard time going to a neighbor and asking for a drill. Like, because you're supposed to be able to provide for yourself. You're supposed to be able to handle this all on your own. And we have this culture of individualism that I think is keeping us very disconnected, and that even keeps us disconnected from ourselves. Like, I would call myself, I think one of the things you could call me is a self relationship coach.
yeah.
And I say that because if we can help you repair that connection and that relationship with yourself, not only is that going to let you do the things you want to do in your life and help you honor who you are, but it's also going to allow you to build healthy connections with others outside of you. You can't be loved for who you are until you're willing to take off your mask. The only person who can take off your mask is you. And that's only going to happen when you feel safe enough with yourself to take off your own mask.
Mm. Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. But like with regards to the sort of realm of connection, like yeah, I agree with regards to men in this world of ours, in this like 21st century modern age, that yeah, men are more like they're drifting more and more away. In some regards, I put that down to sort of the way we communicate these days. Because,
Mm.
okay, for example, like I'm looking at my computer right now, having a conversation with yourself, like thousands of miles away, right?
Yeah.
I've got LinkedIn open, and like basically, I have connections with thousands of people. If I look at my Facebook, I have like connections with like friends, like from universe, like from school, all the way to university, to like random like drunken nights out and like dinner parties. Right. But here's the thing. If you ask me, when was the last time I actually had a conversation with one of my friends?
Right.
I would say a couple of days ago. But if you ask me, yeah, when did you put up a post? I'd say, yeah, I put up a post on a daily basis. And like in some regards, it's like, oh, yes, I've like I've connected with the people I know, but that's like I'm shouting outside and go, hey, how's everyone doing?
Yeah, exactly.
But the sort of quality sort of conversations on a regular basis, I think like have dropped away, not just for myself, I would say for the large percentage of people. And when it comes to the ladies, they are a lot like they're a lot more sort of together socially, but not as much as they were
Right.
back in the day, but they're still a lot better than guys. And because let's be honest, guys can like if you want it, like this is one for the ladies out there. If you wanted to make your man incredibly happy, just leave him alone for an afternoon. Just like tell him he has nothing to do, no responsibilities for that one afternoon. He will love you forever and be very happy. Am I wrong, Jay? It's like,
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah. But but it's all of these things I think leads to that sort of factors of isolation. All of these things which lead to like those factors of not being able to sort of like, yeah, discover or reflect on who people like who they are, if you get what I mean.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. What would you say would be a fix to really sort of overcome this sort of mindset?
So I think it's this problem has two parts.
Mm.
So there are programs. Actually, the UK was one of the leaders here. The Compassionate Throne Project. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not. Huh?
I hope I'm saying the name of the town correctly, but it was led by a doctor in this town of Frome, and her goal was to make sure no one was alone. And they so they built all these programs up where they built men's sheds where the men would come together, repair like gardening tools and things, have a few beers together, and
Mm-hmm.
if there were elderly people that someone was always taking them out with shopping, or like everyone had something to do. There was a club, there was something to do. No one was alone, and they decreased um emergency room, or I think you guys call it A&E or something like that,
Yes.
visits down. They dropped it by a massive percentage. People's health improved. There was a huge, just all this data collected showing if you simply repair a community's sense of relationship, everyone inside is not just emotionally better, but physically better as well.
Mm.
And in the US, we're seeing this as well, where the CDC just came out a couple of years ago saying that loneliness is possibly America's greatest crisis right now, from purely from a physical health standpoint. Now, but the population I work with are people who, if you put them around others, they will just feel more insecure. They feel like they're not enough. They still have that shame. So a lot of them have previously been diagnosed with social anxiety because a lot of people went through therapy before working with me and they found it to be somewhat effective, but there was still a gap. Um, so we have to we want to again improve that self relationship so they are able to be social and build good relationships with others.
Mm.
So it's two parts of it. You need to solve it by having a structure and a purpose for coming together, and you need to make sure that you are in a state where you actually feel like it is safe for you to connect and you want to connect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense because like this is the thing. There is always going to be part of me, and I cannot help it, but it's a case of like my mindset is like, look, there are times where you just got to get out there and just do
Yeah.
do more stuff. If you want to be more, you've got to do more. And it's like this sort of countless like cycle. It took me some time to get to that sort of mindset.
Yeah.
But like if you look at anyone you like, oh yeah, I want to be like that. They are like I would say if you looked at their calendar or if you like sat down and talked to them, they're out there just doing more stuff again and again and again. And they will tend to appear to be more. I don't know if that will be true on every case, but more times than not, when you see it, you're like, yeah, you either do more stuff or you don't. And if you want to grow, you have to do more stuff. And it's not a quick process because people like go, okay, I have become this person. And you go, how old are you? And you go, oh, I'm 25. Oh, okay, right, you're 25. Yeah. Can you fix me in 10 days? 25. Yeah, yeah. So you want me to deal with, say, 20 years of whatever's gone through your mind and like trauma
Right.
and get that sorted in like 10 days. You've got a long and winding road. Like, do you find like have you found there have been some quick fix merchants like out there,
There is. So it varies wildly between people.
Mm,
I've worked with people for 3 months. We've done more in those 3 months than even I was able to do in a year in my work with myself, where they're just ready. And other people, it takes a long time where you're working with them maybe a year, maybe you're working a year and a half, but it's a mix of, is the person ready and and properly motivated, but also are you using an approach that works? So I really love IFS in that it's not the fastest approach, because like something like CBT or DBT or any of these other kind of more cognitive approaches, you get rewarded for effort. So the harder you push, the more you get out of it.
mm,
IFS is the total opposite, because it's about a system of subtraction. It's about, can we just be curious? Can we be open and curious about what's going on? And the more space you give us, the slower you're willing to go, the more relaxed you are, the more we can go to those places where you hold that deep pain. The sooner we can get to the deep pain and heal it, the sooner we can get you on your way feeling better. So it's this paradox of, if you're using an approach that's able to do something very powerful and you're willing to give it time,
mm,
you can end up actually getting faster results, because it lets you do what you need to do without that resistance and that push, and those demands from within.
mm. Yeah, I think it's the patience. Like
Yeah,
that is sometimes the tricky thing because it's like one of those things. Like if you explained it to someone when you want to be fit, like you want to be a fitter, healthy, you want to be an athlete.
right.
You can't you can't do it in a day. You can't do it in a week. You can't do it in a couple of months. Like, if you're starting from a baseline of like, some like D1 college like kid, yeah, maybe you can, but like more times than not, you're not starting from that level. And you've got to
Yeah.
like put that time and effort in because the path down, like the negative path's taken a number of years to get to where you are right now, and it's going to take a number of years to get the other way. And with help, you can get there quicker, but still need to take each one of those little steps. Yeah.
It has to be a daily process. So I like framing it as a self relationship, because I think, improving the relationship with yourself is not wildly different than improving your relationship with someone else in your life.
Mm,
If you think about people who are in, like a couple who's looking to repair and become a better couple, that takes time. It takes that you're going to have to realize that you're going to screw up sometimes, that your partner's going to screw up, but there is a, a determination to say, I want this relationship to be what it can be, and I want us to have what we can have. And if you take that as a model and apply it even with yourself, it puts it in perspective to say, yes, this will be a journey, but it's a marathon, but marathons are doable. You are proof of this, So so, it's that training, it's that putting in the work, and you'll get there. So yes, absolutely.
yeah. Like this is the thing. Like you, finding that sort of spark to like go, I love myself, but finding that self worth.
That's the bigger one.
Yeah. How like this is the thing. How have you helped people find that sort of that nugget, that sort of foundation stone of self-worth to build on?
So it depends which. So IFS and self-compassion are my two main tools,
Mm,
and I would actually call IFS a. It's definitely a compassion-based approach, so kind of arguably could fit under the umbrella. But there is an actual thing called self-compassion that was actually spearheaded by Paul Gilbert, who was a psychologist out of the UK.
mhm.
Started something called compassion focused therapy. And then Kristen Neff in the US has probably been the world's foremost researcher and leader on um, studying self compassion and its efficacy. And she has over 4,000 studies of it now from all around the world posted on her website. IFS and self compassion have been seen ranked as evidence based approaches, meaning that they've been able to hit scientific levels of being able to prove their efficacy. It really, but to answer your question, I think for most people, especially when listening, self-compassion is a lot easier to do on your own with very little guidance, as long as you get, like Kristen Neff has a great book called Self-Compassion. It's really just about training yourself to how can I be a better ally, to keep using that analogy, to myself. And the worth will come in part because it needs to. If Benjamin Franklin, there's this anecdote in American history where when he was working with a colleague that really hated him in Congress, he would go up to him and ask him for a small favor and say, hey, can I borrow, I know you have this really cool book, can I borrow it? And the guy would be like, I don't know, maybe. And he'd hand it over to him, and then he'd hold it, he'd give it back a week later and say, hey, I really appreciate this with the letter, I really appreciate this about the book, I liked it, thank you so much. And he knew that there was no way this guy could still hate him 100% if he did him a favor and if he got something nice from him back. So it like created this opening. And so I was talking to someone lately who said, I really don't get this self-compassion stuff. It sounds like you're trying to whitewash. It sounds like you're trying to tell everyone they're great. I'm like, no, no, no. That's self-esteem. It's different. That's not what we're trying to do.
Mm.
I don't need someone to think they're the most amazing thing in the world. I just want to help them stop being such an asshole to themselves. And that itself will get you a fair way.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Because like, yeah, I think it's one of those things where uh so often, like, okay, don't get me wrong, like I remember watching Tom Hanks where he was playing like doing the whole Mr. Rogers like
Yeah.
film. Love that. Like, yeah. Um, like 143. No, sorry, 134. Was it 143? I love you. Yeah, yeah. 143. I love you, and everything like this, where Mr. Rogers goes, yeah, you like everyone's special. I agree with him to a point, but it's like one of those things where you are special, but it's a case of if you're not willing to work at it, you won't actually get those sort of like release those special
Yeah.
gifts into the world. And I think it's one of those things with regards to a lot of like anxiety people feel today. And like anxiety comes out of a lot of the times, like a lack of practice in whatever they want to achieve. And it might be public speaking, which is not the easiest. It might like be meeting that special someone, whoever that might be. I don't know. It's like it might be meeting that special someone and like not being able to have that sort of courage to like actually have that conversation. It might just be hanging out with people, but it requires all of these things. It's not like, yes, we all parachute into the world and we know it all. No, it
Right.
requires work. It requires like, yeah, living in that sort of realm of discomfort to get you to become that better person. And I think with like many people, sometimes they want the quick fix
Right.
without the effort, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and that's something, especially being an American. I mean, you see that in literally every commercial. Do you have a problem? Oh, we can fix it. Just give us your credit card. And it's like, ah, God, I hate it. Especially because 90% of the time it doesn't solve your problem.
Mm,
But it's, I don't know. I think for me,
yeah.
something will only work if it respects the truth. So if you screw up and you've jacked something up royally, it is your job to own that, to take responsibility for that. But you can still, just like I did with Nace, I owned up to everything I ever did.
Yeah.
And, but I could still approach that with one of the fundamental assumptions or beliefs of self-compassion. And this is an old thing. This comes especially there's a ton of Buddhist literature about this, of this idea of just unconditional human worth. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done. Every human has inherent intrinsic value. Whether or not they act like it, whether or not they realize it, that's a different thing. But so to use your special thing from before, the way I put it is, everyone is unique, but just because you're unique does not make you special. I think we are all inherently equal in value and worth, which means that everyone is deserving of love and respect, even though everyone is simultaneously an imperfect human being. And this includes you. That means even though you are imperfect, you are still deserving of love and respect. You still have to do the work. You still have to do the things, but you don't have to do it from a place of self-loathing or constant self-criticism.
I hear you. And I hear you. I really like that. So yeah, keep smiling, I say. Yeah. So with all of this, now this inspired you, like your work at this present time, to like pen a book there, sir.
Right.
Enough.
It still has yet to get published. I'm looking for the right publisher, but it's been years of work, and it's really a heavy book. That has sought to answer two questions. Why do so many of us feel like we're chronically not enough no matter how much we achieve? And what interventions have actual data and research to show that they help? Because a lot of the things we think will work don't, and a lot of things we blame as problems really aren't the core things. Like, for example, I think the biggest cause of all of this is our modern economic system. It's ever since the 1980s, it's been so much harder for everyone. And there's, at least in America, there were tons of cultural changes. I think in the UK, it was a little bit mitigated because you were a bit more tied from your experiences, perhaps after World War II, than we were in the US. We didn't get bombed, constantly. That didn't bring us together. We had Pearl Harbor, but otherwise the US has never really been invaded, generally speaking, except a few minor, exclusions to this. But just, and I say this as someone who grew up conservative, of which I'm not now, just because the data for me doesn't back it up. But a lot of those Reagan-esque policies, those Thatcher policies, I think create a world where it incentivizes people to be very harsh toward themselves because it's all competition all the time. And if you're in a very competitive environment, you can't be weak. You can't have any flaws, which creates the perfect environment to just tear yourself up, to have a part of you say, well, if we are in a high competition place, we can't show weakness, therefore we have to be perfect, which means I need to ride you and be pushing hard on you and make sure you do everything you need to do. And I really think we don't realize how much economics have played into our culture of how we treat each other, how we treat ourselves. And I could go, our educational system, it plays into all of these things. Yeah. That's a little tangent. You didn't ask me about that, but
no, like this is the thing. No, you raise a valid point. Look, put it this way, like I would say, like rather than economics, consumerism in this sort of modern day and age has played into that. And yeah, I would say like the 80s, where I would say there was a sort of corporate shift change in like over in the States, over in the UK, like yes, rather than sort of like, okay, keep it like we have a company, let's make sure it just ticks over. It came about, let's maximize the profits. Come on, Wall Street, one of the biggest films of that era. Greed is good, as it went. And it kind of just ticked along, and it was going at a rate of knots. But when social media came into play as well, I'm not saying it's just its fault, it exploded onto this next level. where people, rather than sort of like looking, and I would say that goes from the 80s, 90s, early noughties up till present day, like going, what is success to me? What do I value?
Right.
It became, this is what success is. And everyone sort of bought into that and forgot to find out what success like meant to them. Like, you know, it was like, yeah, if you went back to, yeah, you mentioned the Second World War, it'd be like, yes, um, I have a family. I've got like free square, like they get all free square meals and like we are nice and secure. That is success. I'm living the dream.
Right.
Thank you very much. Now it's like, yeah, if you're not balling on some friggin' yacht, super yacht, like, yeah, making it rain type
Right.
situation for everywhere, it's like, that's the sort of success model which people are like, oh, that's my like dream of success. When it doesn't necessarily mean it's true because they haven't really sort of sat down and gone, what would make me happy? What would make me feel that realm of success?
You know what's interesting is in so much of my work, and I don't lead this, everyone I work with, for the most part, at some point, especially if we've done a lot of self-compassion stuff where they're really aware of, they're paying attention to what am I consuming from the world, not just in food, but in media, in the music I listen to, in the print. Um, Almost everyone at some point will take a social media sabbatical, stop watching the news, cancel all of their magazine subscriptions, and will really just focus on real life interactions with friends.
Mm,
And it seems to be this withdrawal that happens naturally where they want to learn more about who am I actually. And the only way they can answer that is if they silence some of this noise from the outside.
mm.
So,
Yeah, the noise, the distraction. But I do often think, like, you know, with regards to us all, we like we do take a lot and we do take like on a continuous basis, but sometimes we don't ask, yeah, what do we give back?
yes.
And I think that's where I think a lot of work needs to be done, but for many a person's life, like what do you give back? Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Or is it just the constant consumption of what this world has to offer?
Yeah, and so you brought up the book, and that the way it's currently is ended is with that is the conclusion is, so what is going to be your way to reconnect with the world and
Mm,
give it that which you can and give others that which you can. Because for me, if someone would feel better, but only feel better so that they could go and be a better cog in the machine or just continue the same process on, for me that would be a failure.
mm,
I want to work, and the people who come to me generally are ones who do, they want to play, they want to get engaged in the community around them, they do want to make things better, they're not happy about what they're seeing, and working on that internal stuff allows them to better integrate. So I've worked with some people who have gotten more involved in politics or get more involved in some sort of charity work or something, or they really say, I want to start mentoring the younger generation. And there is this conscious effort of, if you're feeling better, okay, great. What can you do with that too? How can you be that light for someone else?
mm,
I think that's a vital thing that I agree is very underlooked at.
mm. So if there was like, do you like, because you guys, what was it? You had the Peace Corps at one point,
Yeah,
which went out into the world, like, yeah,
yeah.
like giving young people the opportunity to sort of give back. I don't know if does the Peace
We
Corps,
still do it. Yeah.
yeah, like what, like I think there is a need on, like, I would say pretty much everywhere where to galvanize people into being able to do something like that to maybe help them find whatever their purpose might be. I don't mean like, I'm not saying conscription, everyone, so calm down. It's like, but like a
No,
program what can give some like more young people the opportunity, or even older people the opportunity to give back in this world, you know?
I completely agree. I think some of this is just, maybe perhaps it's people like us that just are pushing to change the culture, because I know people who have wanted to start things and wanted to start social things, but there's just everyone says, I'm just too consumed with my own work. I don't have the time or bandwidth for this. And there is a lot of truth to that.
Mm.
I think so back in the day, back like 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, or it would be actually be more than this. But if we were in a tribe and we were building huts, I'm doing something for the community, but along the way, we're also going to build my hut.
Yeah.
So I think we almost need to rethink. Like, this is one of those structural changes of just asking on a community level, what problems does our community have? How can we start solving them? How can we get even perhaps the government involved in that in a good way? Local businesses. Can we start feeling less, what Thatcher, I forget how she put it exactly. There is no such thing in society, just individuals. We have to change that thinking. We have to change that thinking.
Yeah. Like, this is the thing with regards to, I admit, like I say this now, the conversations need to be had across society, because like, to say the world is in a perilous state, it's a lot of this, like a lot of the issues which come out of this world we're going through right now is the lack of conversation not being had amongst different groups of people on a sort of daily basis, to understand that yes, you are part of a greater community, and from that sense of community, well, from that realm of community, great things come from that: education, health, stability. Like, I mean, look, I'm not going outside thinking, okay, there's going to be a marauding horde which is going to come out and just like, yeah, wipe me, my family out. It's not like that. People are inherently good. It's like, yeah, it's just, if we don't have these conversations and we lose that realm of community society, yeah, there was a time when that happened, and it was called Dark Ages, and it didn't go well for a lot of people, Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm. But yeah, I would say, yeah, how can we mitigate that suffering? That's a question I don't have the answer to. I don't know if you have the answer to it. Jay, do you? Come on now. Come on.
Right. This is the thing. I'm supposed to have the answers. No, I don't have a total answer for that. I will say what I want to do. One of the next projects, no matter what I do in my life, I want to build. So, especially someone who used to study terrorist recruitment, I then went to study gang recruitment. And one of the things you learn is that, first off, mental illness in terrorist groups is very low. Terrorist groups provide people with a lot of things that are missing in the Western world. Things like a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of kinship. Gangs provide similar things. And I've always had this dream. I don't yet know exactly how it's going to come out, but of creating like a pro-social gang, a group probably primarily of men, but that gives men a common purpose to come together in their community. And I've talked to different people about this. We've had different ideas, but I'm working on this. So maybe the next time I'm on the show, I'll have a great answer for you. But I do want to work in this space, and I do want to come up with answers for this.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe in the future I'll have something for you.
No worries. Tyler Durden.
Took me a second to get that. Yeah.
No. Okay. As long as you don't start manufacturing soap. Oh, yeah.
I know, right? I shaved my head up in a fur coat. Yeah,
it's like, hey, Jay, you're looking really cool. Don't worry.
We don't talk about that.
Okay, yeah, no. No, never talk about it. What's the first rule? What's the second rule? Okay. But yeah, no, I do think there is gang group community. Yeah. It's amazing you say that. Yeah, mental health is one of the things which is quite low in a terrorist group or like gang situation, which, let's just say, if you're in a terrorist cell, I can only imagine. I am not involved in any terrorist group before anyone comes into me. But I would imagine that would be a stressful situation. But yeah, having that camaraderie purpose, and like, yeah, knowing you've got to work to one ideal. Ooh, it's a very sort of powerful things what bring people together, you know?
And that's what's missing. You know, if you recruit, one of the things I was really fascinated by is what would make someone from Oklahoma go and join a terrorist group in Syria. And when you see it happen and play out, it's usually online. It's usually, you know, they'll meet a recruiter online, and
Mm.
this will be a very lonely person who doesn't have strong connections in their life. And this person online is just like love bombing them. It's just they're just saying, "Oh, you're getting it so much how we're all suffering over here, and you're such a good person for seeing this and seeing how we're being wronged." And you just escalate that. They just escalate that and make the person feel more loved, more attention to, more connected. Then they're like, you know, would you want to actually join us and be part of this? You know, and then make the pitch. What? Because what are you going to do with your life? Are you going to just maybe get married, have a few kids, have some job, and then you'll die and no one knew that you lived? Or will you join a group of people changing the world, fighting for what's right, and you get to usher in a better tomorrow? And the person's like, well, man, if you're going to frame it that way.
Yeah. Oh God.
But
Yeah.
then you get there and you see the reality of it.
Well,
But that's the pitch.
well, the pitch is the pitch. The pitch is
Yeah.
everything. And like, you know what I mean? It's like, people buy into that pitch hard. Um, it was, oh God. Was it? I think it was like the Times in the UK. This was like back 100 years ago. There was an advert which was placed in there, and like there are going to be people out there who correct me, and like it was like basically if you seek a life of adventure and like such and such, but there is no guarantee of high pay or like you know what I mean success, and like yes your life will be put at risk on a daily basis, and like yes you might not even survive, and like it was like a small advert, and it was like going yes come to this address on this day. Over 150 men showed up on that day just to like yeah they didn't have an idea of what it was entirely, but it was like going yeah I need some of that. I don't know why. And I think it's a case of when it comes to most guys, you like you need something physical in your life to sort of
Yeah.
get that sweat, and you need something will help raise that level of grit to sort of like help get you going. Like yeah, people like, oh, what about the intellect? Yes, read, get smarter, improve your skills. But I think one of the sort of main driving forces for guys is sweating and like something what will put grit in their life. They got that going for them. By all means, they'll eat it up in like
Yeah.
no time at all, you know?
If I'm not mistaken, your advert is the advert for Shackleton, wasn't it?
Possibly, possibly. I
I
like
think it was.
yeah,
Which is, you know, you asked in your form for this, what's your favorite book? And I said Endurance by Alfred Lansing, the story of Shackleton and going down. And I'm fairly certain that was, if it's not exactly what you're thinking of, it's an advert just like that, like low pay, low chance of survival, lots of adventure.
mm, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's needed. And I think with regards to that in life, yeah, like I think people need to like seek out the adventure, seek out the challenge, seek out the thing
Yes.
that's going to give that
Yes.
grit for them, and like whew, see how far they can possibly go from that. I would say.
And just to bring a full circle,
Mm,
what is more challenging than facing your deepest fears and your deepest feelings of insecurity and shame?
yeah,
Like that is a whole other level of exploration and adventure and not knowing what's going to be the other side. But if you can make it, there are jewels and gold that are worth having that you will not find anywhere else.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to have to ask this of you. Like this will most probably be like, yeah, second to last question. So with like with this all, where would you like your journey to go with it over the next few years?
In a perfect world,
Apart
if
from
I had
standing
a
a gang like Tyler Durden.
it would actually be, I think I feel very strongly, even though this isn't necessarily, I never wanted to do this work. This wasn't something I feel like this is something that is part of my journey, and it's just better for me to come to peace with it. I think it's helping spread this message, helping spread this awareness of the truth of why we have the issues we have today, how we can solve them, and what we can do about it. I would love to see myself engaged or playing a role in, having a book published in this. And I'm looking at a couple other books potentially right afterwards, especially one that might be about men. But being part of some organization that's helping build community around the world. I would love to learn more about the science behind what I do. I would love to learn more of the neuroscience behind it, especially around decision making, on top of what I already know. And I would really like to be able to just sit back on an evening and enjoy a cold beer. That would be, if I could have all of those three things, that would be great.
Outstanding. Outstanding. I like that. I like that. But my final question for
Sure.
today, what would be the one thing you would say to your younger self?
This is not going to go how you think it's going to go.
Wow.
And that's going to be really scary for you because you think it has to go this way. And you're terrified of how others will relate to you if you deviate from this. And I just want you to know that if you're willing to ride those rapids, you're going to experience some great stuff that you never knew that you would have the chance to experience. And the quicker you can come to peace with the fact that this is not going to go how you thought it would, but it's still going to be interesting, is the sooner you're going to have fun and the sooner you're really just going to enjoy this life.
What is that noise in the background? No, very nice, very nice. No, don't know what to say to that, but yeah, I'm sure your younger self would take those sage words, and I don't know what he would say, but yeah, because I'm sure he'd give it a thought or two. Like Jay, I have to say thank you for coming on to the podcast today.
Thank you,
You have
Noah.
been a gent, a scholar, a delight to have. Oh yeah. Can you tell the lovely people how they can find you out on these interwebs?
Absolutely. So, in keeping with trying to practice what I preach, you can't really find me well on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not very active on it. But the best way to get in touch with me is just through my website, jamesjstamatelos.com. I assume maybe there'll be a link in the description for this.
Yes.
Pop through on the website. I have a forum there. Write to me on the forum or on the form. You can submit it there, and I'll be in touch with you, probably within 24, 48 hours.
Perfect. Perfect. Go out there, get in contact with Jay, and yes, I'm sure he'll be able to help you out. And maybe with a bar of super too. That's another story. I'd like to say thank you to Jay. Thank you, sir, for coming on today. And yeah, I'd like to say thank you to you, my friends, my life warriors, for sticking with us to the end of the show. So please stay well, stay safe, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic. Be all the positive bees you can be in this world and then some. And remember, guys, keep pushing forward. Peace. And we are.